which caused a lot of friction between the two departments. So we did, like I said, we had started with Agile. So all the development departments were working with Scrum, but all with different levels of maturity, as in make your own Scrum. We like this element, but we do not like that element. I don't like to do refinements. It takes too much of my time, but I do sprint planning. How do you know what you're going to do on Monday? Well, we'll just take some backlog stories and throw them in, and it'll be fine. So every team was doing it differently. All the team had different sprint numbers. For example, one team started in sprint like 45 sprints before the other team started working Agile, and so we had one team in sprint 45 and one sprint in 100, and there's no way to sync them. So it was a good effort, but it wasn't working, so we needed to change. So we came up with some goals, things we wanted to achieve at LeaseWeb. So fully autonomous teams that are empowered to make changes. We want to have predictable development, meaning if you say it's going to be delivered in X sprints, we want it to be delivered in around X sprints. Priorities based on value for the company, so no longer who's screaming the loudest, but what is actually generating enough value for us as a company. We want transparency for the development and the roadmap, so our sales teams and our marketing teams knows when to expect this feature or when they should start promoting it. And we want a responsive organization based on market needs. So if the market changes, we want to be able to adapt fast and not be the last to know. So changing the way we work is, of course, a process. There was definitely a lot of resistance in the company. About the half of the company really saw that there needed to be change, and the other half of the company was like, no, everything is working fine, let's not change the way we're working, it's sort of working. But eventually we got all the teams on board, but we still had two strategies. We had one side of the company who just wanted everything to be ready for the new style of working, and then we start working the new style. And we had the other part of the company that says, it's never going to be perfect, it's never going to be done, let's just start and improve. Basically, we prepared definitely some things to make the people happy that says we need to be ready, but then just got started because there's so much to do, you can't prepare for everything. And once you got started, things go in a whirlwind. Things go so much faster than when you're just preparing for something. So let's start with how to empower our engineering team. So we want autonomous teams that are empowered to make changes, meaning if you're an engineer, you can decide how this works and how it should work. So to boost productivity in our company, we started by organizing a hackathon. It's super simple. We gave them 2 days of work, off of work, and you can work on whatever you want. It doesn't have to be work related. The only thing we ask from you, if you have something that is nice, then please demo it at the end so we know what we gave the 2 days for you to work on. And we have seen some amazing results coming out of this. This basically allows engineers to show, I think we need to work on this because it's frustrating me the way it currently works. I think we should change it, and I have an idea how to change it. Here's a demo. And then for most of the people in the company, it's like, oh, okay, you have a working demo, I see what you mean. And then a lot of projects have been basically developed out of what initially started to be a hackathon project. And it's also great if you just want to try something. So the last hackathon, I did a project because I wanted to test a monitoring tool. I spent 2 days working on a monitoring tool, found out it wasn't fitting my needs, 2 days not wasted, and I moved on, and it was a great hackathon. So this is great for experimentation, and it's also great for empowering. And it's super easy. We do a nightly event to keep people energized. So we did laser tagging at our office We have 2 floors in a building that's basically not, one floor is totally not used, and the other floor is our demo room. And we opened it up, and we got professional laser guns, and it was awesome. So super easy to do. And the next thing after the hackathons we did, to make empowerment happen, you need to make the team responsible for their own product. So if you make the product, you need to run it. So if the site breaks, you are going to be the one that is getting called out of bed in the middle of the night. That ensures that the next time you launch a new feature, you're going to think about, hey, is this going to wake me up at 3 a.m. tomorrow? So that makes teams a lot more responsible and more stable development, and people are going to think about it, and people are going to actually fix their problems. So all the way from development to production, the team is responsible. We have an engineer on duty every night, for a week. So the engineer is on call for a week, and then we rotate in the team. And of course, eat your own dog food is, if you have products, you should use them yourself. So every engineer at LeaseWeb gets a VPS or a dedicated server or whatever product he works on or wants to work on. So you can basically use our own services, see and interact with our support department, with all the things that happen that a customer would normally face. Okay, so measure the maturity of the team. So what we first started to do is we set out to make those goals, and all teams had a different level of maturity. So how do you measure the maturity of a team? So we created a maturity model, which I will present in a couple minutes, and which we actually open sourced. But basically, we set a maturity model. In the maturity model, we set stages for how advanced you are. So we first want to get all the teams up to basic level. We want to have you use all the standards, all the things like central logging, make sure you have monitoring on your applications, make sure you deploy, you do code reviews, simple things that are standard for most teams, but some teams weren't doing. So we first want to get you to the standard level, and then we want to go on evolving to mastery. So you are going to have masters in your organization that are really good at one thing. We want to develop them, have them basically pull the rest of the company up in a standard level. So, and then after you reach mastery, you want to keep evolving your standards. So the standards we publish now are probably not the standards we're going to keep working with in the future. They're going to evolve, they're going to get better, they're going to get harder. So we've divided our maturity model in 4 categories. Culture and people is, are you measuring happiness in your team? Are you measuring stakeholder happiness? Are you making sure that people get together and do fun things with each other? Things like that. We have DevOps agility. How's your deployment pipeline looking? Are you using development processes that are healthy? How do you do incident response? Do you learn from your mistakes? Things like that. Business value. Are you actually building the things that bring value to the company? Or are you just building things that you like building? So how much revenue is this feature that you're building gonna make? Do you measure how much money it made after you put it in production? How often is it getting used? Are you getting feedback? Are you collecting feedback? Things like that. And then automation and tooling. Are you using continuous integration? Are you automating away the things that frustrate and eat a lot of time of you? Things like that. So this is what our model looks like. We have the 4 categories. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then each team has a button in each quarter. And then we all start in the initial phase, Then we have basic level, which some teams have reached, intermediate level, and the target. We all want to end up basically in here for all of the 4 quadrants. And you see business value is going pretty well, automation and tooling. Some teams are nearly there, some teams are nearly in the advanced. And this is actually an old picture of like 2 months ago. But this is the way we track how advanced a team is, and it's open. It's on the development floor. You walk into the building on the 3rd floor, and boom, it's right there. You can see, oh man, this team finally went into the intermediate level or something. So it's also a kind of a game. It stimulates good behavior. So for those who are interested in what is actually in our a maturity model, we have a blog post about the maturity model, and the maturity model itself, you can find it on GitHub. I'll let you take a picture for 1 second. So let's start with the definition of done. So we now have a Scrum team who's working on things, but now you get the question, when is something done? So before this, we write a definition of done. And each team defines its own definition of done, because a definition of done is going to be different for each team. So, but things to have in a definition of done. Does it have logging, monitoring, measurements, dashboards, documentation, successful build? Did you get peer reviews? Are you using standard tools? Have you evaluated other tools? Is the rest of the business informed? Things like that can all be in your definition of done. It's just a checklist. It can be super simple. For each thing you merge into master, make sure that these things are there, otherwise you're not done. And we're only done with the user story when our definition of done is met. Okay, so this is basically the layout of our Scrum team. In case you don't know Scrum, this is a small indication. So we have a product owner who's responsible for defining the priorities of the team. We have a Scrum Master who's in charge of the Scrum process and is also a coach to the team, making sure that we do the refinements, making sure everybody shows up for the meetings. We do evaluations, things like that. And then we have the DevOps and operations engineers. So they're all combined in one team. Our teams are usually between 5 and 8 people, and we have about 14, 15 development teams. We started to get more agile, to get everybody on the same level instead of everybody his own Scrum level. We started with some training. The guys from ProAwareness, they're here today. They actually trained us, and they were really helpful. We first started training our Scrum Masters and product owners. Then came stakeholders, so this is sales, the owners of the company, support, everybody who needs to interact with our development process has also gotten training. So this just happened. This happened to help a lot in speaking the same language. Do you understand how we work? What can we ask from you? What is really not what we're going to discuss here? So everybody just knows what to do and how to do it. So let's go back to our goals. With the tools that I just gave you, we basically accomplished the fully autonomous teams that are empowered. And we're going to go on and finish off how we made all the other things happen as well. So the next thing we're going to tackle is the priorities based on value for the company. And I'm going to show you how we did this in a simple way for us. So we write business cases. The company, anybody in the company can write a business case. Basically, the idea is I want to change something. It's going to make us this amount of money, and you base that on numbers. And then you give that business case to the engineering department. We calculate, okay, if you want these features, how much would it cost? So we do the cost, so the value is calculated by the business, how much it's going to bring us, and the cost is calculated by engineering department. And we have a process for this. We do this in our bi-weekly roadmap session. So every Thursday, every other Thursday, we have a meeting where we collaborate with the stakeholders. So we invite sales, one person from sales, one person from support, one person from marketing, one person basically from every department that we need. And we talk about a business case. So we announce, okay, we're going to talk about our business case, managed services, or whatever the business case is, monitoring. Everybody who's interested, please come, join the session, give feedback. So we talk over the business case. What does it mean for you? What does it need to have for you? And everybody puts all their ideas on sticky notes and we slap them on a wall. And it doesn't matter, it can be anything crazy in this stage. All the ideas are welcome. We put all of the ideas on the stickies. And then from that, we do a refinement session. We go in and look if we see patterns in the stickies. Usually you have a couple of stickies with the same sort of thing. You group them together. And then once you have a nice overview of all your stickies, of all the requirements you have, we define a minimal viable product. So what is the minimal viable product? Do you guys know what a minimal viable product is? Do you know this term? Okay. So the minimal viable product is what's the minimal things we need to build to make this actually get the maximum amount of value. So we want to get minimal cost, maximum value. And then we decide, okay, this is nice, but we don't need it in the initial release. And we're really critical on that. So once we define the minimal viable product, we find the dependencies on other teams. So we know, okay, we need this part from that team. We ask the team and we invite the team and we tell them we need this feature. They're going to refine it too. And then at the end, we're going to figure out with our stakeholders there, how important is this business case? So we now have the cost, we have the value. The cost is calculated because we have the minimal viable product. You do a refinement with your team, you get how much time will it take to develop this. You have a number, you have the value, you have the cost, and then finding the priority of the refined business case is going to be really easy. You're going to work on the business case that brings in the most money. Super simple. So, predictable development. So we have 2 weekly sprints. The whole company is in the same heartbeat now. So our sprint names are 2016. Sprint 1 is for the first 2 weeks. Sprint 2 is for the second 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. And in each development iterations, we do 4 refinements of 1 hour. They're maximum 1 hour. You can choose to skip it if you're basically well ahead. And we limit it to 1 hour because it's a really intensive process when you're trying to figure out how does this sticky note translate into a user story of something I need to build. Then we have 1 planning session at the beginning of the sprint where we basically plan what we're going to work on the next 2 weeks, and then we execute with Scrum. So every morning we have our daily stand-up. On Friday, the last Friday of the sprint, we have an evaluation, a retrospective. Oh, actually, I have a nice slide what a refinement actually needs. So we do a refinement. We do it only with the Scrum team. None of our stakeholders are present because it should be easy and open conversation between developers saying, it's going to take X amount of time or it's going to take Y amount of time. Okay, I definitely need to hurry up. All right, so refinements. So we give story points to stories, and it's not based on how long you're going to work on something, but how complex is something, and this is an important difference. If you do something very often, it's not very complex anymore. It's become a regular task. It's still going to take you time, but you don't have to do any discovery. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, things like that. So the complexity of that story is going to be lower than a story when you have to find out everything. So the definition of ready. So when is a user story refined enough? Have you identified all the stakeholders? Is the description for a story? Do you have story points? Are the acceptance criteria met? Have you managed the dependencies with the other teams? Is it small enough that you can finish it in one sprint? And we have a small acronym called INVEST, and INVEST stands for independent. Can you do it independently of anybody else? Negotiable? Can you talk to your peers about, is this story actually going to be 20 points, 14 points, or whatever? Is it valuable? If it's not making you money, you should not be wasting time on it. Is it estimizable? It's not going to be, it's too big. That we're not going to do that. It has to be fit in one sprint, and otherwise you chop it up into multiple user stories. It needs to be small, and it needs to be testable. So at the end, you need to have something that you can test. So team velocity, which is the amount of story points you burn in a sprint over time. It's just a graph you're going to see, and you're going to take the average of this, and it's going to change. If you get a new team member, your sprint velocity is going to adjust. But basically, if you know the sprint in the team velocity, you know how much story points to put in a sprint, and that makes planning a lot easier. So the cost of a business case is basically the amount of story points in the business case divided by the team velocity is the number of sprints. From that, you can calculate how much development time it will take, and that is the cost. The value minus the cost is the priority, and you work on the most the most valuable business case first. So, okay, we have priorities based on company and autonomous teams that are empowered. We have product management, which is a different function for each of the major projects we have. Bare metal, cloud, and CDN. We have a product manager. He identified trends in the market, writes business cases to respond to the market, and he's responsible for the non-development tasks like talking to marketing, making sure the sales is there, the procurement, that we have enough stocks, things like that. That's our product manager. The product steering committee. This is something that you won't find in Scrum. This is something we thought of. We want to be able to communicate through the entire business what we're working on and what all the interleaved part of the companies is. So we have a board of directors who sit in the product steering committee. The product owners present their roadmap, what we're going to work on in the next 4 sprints. The owners can say that's not what they're going to work on, but it rarely happens. Only when the whole process failed, like somehow we'd get the wrong value or somebody miscalculated or there's just something going horribly wrong, is when the project steering committee would actually intervene. But it's basically for us a way to create trust with management, saying, okay, we're actually working according to a methodology. Here are the results. We're very transparent. We're working on this. So after we present it and the steering committee okays it, we basically get approval and we commit to the next 4 sprints and teams start development. So now we have predictable development, priority based on the value of the company and fully autonomous teams, and a responsive organization based on market needs. So the last thing is transparency. So we have business cases per team, and the amount of business cases you have gives you a good indication of how understaffed or overstaffed your team is. If you have a lot of business cases and 4 developers, you might want to make the team a little bigger. If you have 1 business case and 8 developers, you might want to shrink the team a little bit. So you can scale with this, with having business cases per team. You can basically score how busy a team is, how big a team should be. So at the end of each sprint, we have showcases where we basically show off all the new things that we did, and this is to be proud of what you accomplished. So the business, the entire business shows up for this meeting where we just show off, hey, business, you asked for a new cloud feature. Here's the new cloud feature. Here's how it works. The entire company knows how it works and that it exists. And we try to make it fun and we celebrate our achievements. So Then at the end of the sprint, we also do team retrospectives, which is only with the team. We ask the question, what is going well and what isn't? What can we improve? How could we learn from this? What things do we need to tackle in the next sprints? What do we not want to keep? And a very important one, we anonymously measure the happiness of the team with the Google form that is automatically sent out every week, where we just asked you to fill in one form with, 20 questions, and you rate them from 1 to 7, and it generates a graph of how happy the team is. If you see the graph going down, you can use that as an instrument in asking in a retrospective, guys, what happened? Why are we so unhappy this sprint? What changed with the previous sprint and now, and what should we do about it? And that's usually a great a tool for making the team work through their issues. All right, so validate a feature and a product. So this is what a lot of people skip. So if I ask you a question, okay, you release this feature, I'm going to be sure that my board is going to ask me, okay, so you worked and you spent 40,000 euros on development. How much has it brought us? I know the business case said it's going to bring us 1 million or whatever amount, but how much has it actually brought us? So we measure this. So, and it can be really simple. How often has your button been clicked? Or how often has your order form been processed? Or how often has that feature been used? And then how much time and money has it been saved? So if something was manual before, let's say a server installation with RAID was manual, we automated hardware RAID, and now each installation would cost 20 minutes, 2 hours of a developer's time. We automated it, and now it only costs 20 minutes, and we did 100 installations. Then you can calculate how much time we saved with this feature. And based on the results of your validation, you can decide if you're going to invest in building more than just the MVP. If it's hugely popular, if a lot of people are using it, then of course you're going to invest more time in it. If you built it, everybody thought it would bring in millions and 2 people use it, then either you did your marketing wrong or the feature is not as requested as you want. And you can fail early. You can fail and you can just say, okay, we have this feature, it's not getting used, fine, we'll move on. We'll move to something that brings in more money. Okay, I think I already have this. So business cases per team, how understaffed is a team, scale accordingly. And now we have all the LeaseWeb goals prioritized. I hope this was clear for everybody. In case you are interested, we are hiring leaseweb.com/jobs. And I would really like it if you would rate my talk so I can actually learn and improve and make it better. That's my talk.
Thank you, Arnoud. Well done. Are there any questions? Yes.
In your presentation, you said something about scaling up and down teams.
Yeah.
Is that something that happens every 4 sprints because that's what you commit to, or how do you ensure stable teams?
Yeah, no, it's something that we not very often do, but so we try to keep a team running because every time you make a change in a team, it affects their velocity. But that said, if you have one team which has nothing to do and another team who is scrambling in work, then you clearly need to redefine priorities. So when obvious things like that come up, we do shuffle or we change priorities, but it's not something we do on a 4-weekly basis. It's on an incidental basis.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, of course.
Do you synchronize the story point value across teams? So is 4 points the same amount of work or effort or complexity in every team?
No, because we only rate, so each team rates their own business cases. Each team has their own velocity, so it's purely contained to the team. If you need a dependency on another team, they will do their own refinement. They will calculate how much story points in their sprint will cost, and they will do the cost calculation as well. Okay, that's one more question.
One more question.
Oh, two.
Hi. I'd like to know if you can evaluate this. How much did it cost for LeaseWeb to adopt this process, and how much did it save?
Good question. I don't have any numbers on that, but I think we should evaluate that. That's very fair. Next time I'm giving this talk, I'll update a slide. I'd really have to measure it.